The meeting room fell silent as Dae-hyun pressed the button on the projector. Above the table, a holographic image appeared showing 12 red dots moving through space. Each dot represented a warship, and all of them were heading straight toward New Haven. "How long do we have?" someone asked from the back of the room. 16 hours, Dae-hyun replied. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses. He had been the colony administrator for 7 years, and in all that time he had never imagined this moment would actually come. Minji stood up from her seat. She was the chief engineer, a woman who always had grease under her fingernails and solutions to impossible problems. "What about the defense grid? Can we activate it?" "What defense grid?" a farmer named Taejin shouted. "We don't have weapons here. We're farmers, engineers, families. This is a civilian colony." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The meeting room was packed with nearly 200 people, representing most of the adult population of New Haven. Outside, their children were probably playing in the fields. Unaware that their entire world was about to change, Dae-hyun raised his hand for silence. "I've already sent distress signals to Earth. The nearest naval fleet is responding. How long until they arrive?" asked So-min, the colony's medical officer. She sat near the front, her dark eyes focused and calculating. She was already thinking about casualties, about how many beds she would need in the medical center. 3 weeks, Dae-hyun admitted. The room erupted. People shouted over each other, some demanding evacuation, others asking why the colony had no defenses. A few people started crying. Dae-hyun let them vent for a moment before speaking again. "There are no evacuation ships large enough to carry us all. We have cargo vessels, but they're not equipped for passengers. Even if we tried, the Valkyrie would intercept us before we reached the jump point. So we're just supposed to wait here and die?" Taejin demanded. Before Dae-hyun could answer, the door at the back of the room burst open. A teenager ran inside, his face flushed with excitement and fear. It was Hyunwoo, a 16-year-old student who spent most of his free time in the colony's small observatory. "I've been tracking them," Hyunwoo gasped, holding up a datapad. "The Valkyrie ships. I got detailed scans." Minji stood up and took the pad from him. She studied the data for a moment, her expression growing darker. "These are military vessels. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, and what looks like a command ship. This isn't a scouting party. This is an invasion force. Why would they send so many ships for us?" someone asked. "We're just a farming colony on the edge of nowhere." Dae-hyun knew the answer, but he didn't want to say it out loud. The Valkyrie Empire had been expanding for years, swallowing up smaller civilizations and claiming their territory. They were methodical and ruthless. They probably saw New Haven as an easy target, a way to test human defenses and send a message to Earth. "They're making an example of us," So-min said quietly. She had reached the same conclusion. The room fell silent again. People looked at each other, searching for hope in the faces of their neighbors. Some held hands. Others stared at the floor. Dae-hyun took a deep breath. "I won't lie to you. Our situation is difficult, but we're not helpless. We have emergency bunkers that can withstand orbital bombardment. We have supplies that can last for months, and we have each other." "That's not enough," Taejin said bitterly. "We need weapons. We need soldiers. We need a miracle." Minji folded her arms across her chest. "Maybe we have more than you think." Everyone turned to look at her. She exchanged a glance with Dae-hyun, and something passed between them. "A secret, perhaps, or an understanding. What do you mean?" Hyunwoo asked. "I mean, we should prepare for their arrival," Minji said carefully. "Everyone needs to know where the bunker entrances are. We need to secure all the children first. Food, water, medical supplies, everything goes underground." Salman stood up. "I'll organize the medical center. We'll move everything we can to the emergency facilities." Other people started volunteering for tasks. Despite their fear, the colonists were not the type to give up easily. They had chosen to live on the frontier after all. They knew life out here came with risks. Dae-hyun watched them organize themselves, feeling a mix of pride and guilt. These people trusted him. They believed he would keep them safe. But there was so much he couldn't tell them, so much they didn't know. After the meeting ended and most people had left, Minji approached him. "Should we tell them the truth?" Dae-hyun shook his head. "Not yet. If this goes wrong, it's better they don't know. They can claim ignorance, and if it goes right, then we'll have time to explain." Hyunwoo was still in the room, putting away his datapad. He looked up at them. There's something else. The Velkari ships are broadcasting on open channels. They're not even trying to hide their communications. What are they saying? Daehyun asked. They're laughing, Hyunwoo said quietly. They're treating this like a joke. Like we're not even worth worrying about. Minji's jaw tightened. Let them laugh. Daehyun walked to the window and looked out at the colony. New Haven stretched across a wide valley, surrounded by rolling hills covered in golden crops. The buildings were simple but well built, designed to withstand the moon's harsh weather. In the distance, he could see the greenhouses catching the light from the setting sun. Children were playing near the central plaza, their laughter carrying on the wind. It looked peaceful. It looked harmless. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to look like. 16 hours, Daehyun said softly. Let's make sure everyone is ready. As night fell over New Haven, the colonists worked through the darkness. They moved supplies, checked systems, and prepared the bunkers. Parents hugged their children a little tighter. Engineers ran final diagnostics on equipment that most people didn't know existed. And high above, invisible against the stars, 12 Velkari warships drew closer with every passing minute. Daehyun stood alone on the observation deck watching the stars. Somewhere up there, the enemy was coming. They thought New Haven would be easy prey. They thought wrong. He allowed himself a small smile. In 16 hours, the Velkari would learn an important lesson about humanity. Appearances could be very deceiving. Commander Theron stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small moon grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, his officers worked at their stations, running scans and preparing weapon systems. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Status report, Theron commanded. His second officer, a young warrior named Vess, looked up from her console. All ships are in formation. Weapons are charged and ready. The target colony is directly ahead. Any response from the humans? They've sent several distress signals to their homeworld. Standard emergency protocols. Nothing unusual. Theron allowed himself a satisfied smile. This mission was almost too easy. The Velkari Empire had been studying humanity for months, analyzing their colonies and military capabilities. Earth's inner worlds were well defended, but their outer settlements were vulnerable. New Haven was the perfect first target. How many humans are on the surface? Theron asked. Approximately 3,000, Vess replied. Mostly civilians. Farmers, engineers, families. Our scans detect no military presence. Any orbital defenses? None that we can detect. They have basic communication satellites and weather monitoring stations. That's all. One of the junior officers laughed. They didn't even try to run. They're just sitting there waiting for us. Theron nodded. They have nowhere to run. Their ships are too slow and we control all the jump points. They're trapped. He walked closer to the view screen, studying the colony below. From orbit, New Haven looked like a typical agricultural settlement. He could see fields arranged in neat geometric patterns, clusters of buildings, a few roads connecting different sections. There were some larger structures that were probably warehouses or processing facilities. Nothing threatening. Nothing military. Prepare to broadcast our ultimatum, Theron ordered. Vess hesitated. Commander, I'm noticing something unusual in the scans. What is it? The colony's power generation seems excessive for a farming settlement. They're producing almost 3 times what they should need. Theron frowned. Perhaps they're running factories or indoor farms. Perhaps, Vess said, but she didn't sound convinced. There's also the layout of the fields. These patterns are very precise. Almost too precise. They're farmers, Theron said dismissively. Of course their fields are precise. That's what farmers do. Yes, Commander. But Vess continued studying her console and her frown deepened. She noticed that many of the buildings had unusually thick foundations. The warehouses had power conduits that seemed far too large, and there were underground structures scattered throughout the colony, connected by tunnels that showed up faintly on deep scans. Commander, she said carefully, I recommend caution. Something about this colony doesn't match our intelligence reports. Theron turned to face her, his expression hardening. Are you questioning my judgment, Captain Vess? No, Commander. I'm simply suggesting that we proceed carefully. This is a farming colony with no weapons and no defenses, Theron said sharply. The Empire sent 12 warships because we're using this mission to train our junior officers. It's an exercise, Captain. Nothing more. Vess lowered her eyes. Yes, Commander. Theron returned his attention to the view screen. He had waited years for this opportunity. He was one of the youngest commanders in the Valkyrie fleet, and he needed victories to advance his career. This mission was supposed to be his first step toward greatness. A quick, clean conquest that would prove his worth to the Empire. "Broadcast the ultimatum," he ordered. The communication officer activated the transmission. Theron's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Attention! Human colony designated New Haven. This is Commander Theron of the Valkyrie Empire. Your settlement now lies within territory claimed by the Empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. You have 1 hour to comply. Resistance will be met with complete destruction." They waited. Theron expected immediate compliance. Perhaps some begging or pleading. Most conquered species did that. Instead, after several minutes, a calm voice responded. "This is Administrator Daehyun of New Haven Colony. We have received your message. However, we must respectfully decline your demand. We suggest you reconsider your approach and withdraw from this system." The bridge fell silent. Then several officers burst out laughing. "Did he just tell us to leave?" one officer asked in disbelief. "They're bluffing," another said. "They think if they act brave, we'll back down." Theron wasn't laughing. He was insulted. "Open a channel." The communication officer nodded. "Administrator Daehyun," Theron said, his voice cold. "You clearly don't understand your situation. You have no weapons. You have no defenses. You have no hope of rescue. Surrender now, or I will bombard your colony from orbit. Your people will die, and it will be your fault." Again, there was a pause. Then Daehyun's voice returned, still calm. "Commander Theron, you are making a mistake. This system is protected under Earth's defense treaty. Any attack will be considered an act of war." "We are already at war," Theron replied. "Your hour begins now." He cut the transmission and turned to his officers. "Prepare all weapons. Target their power facilities and main settlements. When the hour expires, I want to see those fields burning." "Yes, Commander," they replied in unison. Vess was still studying her console. The more she looked, the more concerned she became. She pulled up historical data on human colonies and compared them to New Haven. Most farming settlements were ramshackle affairs, built quickly with minimal infrastructure. But New Haven was different. It was too organized, too efficient, too perfect. "Commander," she said quietly, "I really think we should run additional scans before we attack." Theron spun around. "Enough! I will not have my authority questioned on my own bridge. The humans are trying to intimidate us with empty threats. It's a psychological tactic, nothing more. But the power readings are irrelevant," Theron shouted. "Take your station, Captain Vess, or I will find someone else to replace you." Vess fell silent and returned to her work. But her hands trembled slightly as she prepared the weapon systems. Something was wrong. She could feel it. The hour passed slowly. Theron watched the countdown timer, savoring the anticipation. This was his moment. His first conquest. History would remember Commander Theron as the warrior who broke humanity's outer defenses. "Time's up," he announced. "Move to attack formation. All ships prepare to fire on my command." The fleet adjusted its position, spreading out to surround the colony. Targeting systems locked onto key structures. Plasma cannons charged with enough energy to level entire city blocks. On the surface, New Haven remained quiet. No ships launched. No weapons appeared. The colony just sat there waiting. "They're fools," Theron muttered. "Brave fools, but fools nonetheless." Vess said nothing. She simply watched her scanners and prayed she was wrong about her suspicions. Theron raised his hand dramatically. "All ships fire at will." The Valkyrie fleet opened fire, and in that moment everything changed. The first plasma bolt never reached the surface of New Haven. In the underground command center, Minji watched her displays with cold focus. The moment the Valkyrie ships fired, her fingers moved across the control panel. "Activating defensive protocols," she said calmly. "All systems are green." Above ground, what the Valkyrie had assumed were irrigation pipes suddenly rotated skyward. These weren't water systems. They were railgun emplacements hidden in plain sight among the fields. Metal rails hummed with electromagnetic energy as projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds. The first Valkyrie destroyer didn't even have time to react. A tungsten rod traveling at a significant fraction of light speed punched through its shields as if they were paper. The ship split in half, its reactor breaching in a flash of white light that briefly illuminated the entire battlefield. On the Valkyrie flagship, alarms screamed across every console. "Report. Theron shouted, gripping the arms of his command chair. Destroyer 3 is gone, an officer yelled. Direct hit from the surface. They have weapons. That's impossible. Our scans showed another alarm. Another explosion. This time it was a cruiser on their left flank. Vess was already working frantically at her station. Commander, those aren't irrigation systems. They're concealed weapons platforms, and they're tracking us with military-grade targeting systems. On the surface, more systems activated. The large structures that the Velkari had identified as grain silos began to open. But instead of grain, they contained missile batteries. Hundreds of missiles launched simultaneously, their engines blazing trails across the sky. Minji's voice remained steady as she coordinated the attack. Missile Spread Alpha launching. Target their command ship and heavy cruisers first. In the bunker below the command center, Daehyun watched through monitors as New Haven revealed its true nature. Around him, the colonists who had finally been told the truth watched in stunned silence. Children held their parents' hands. Some people were crying, but not from fear anymore. How long have you known? Someone whispered. Since the beginning, Daehyun replied softly. This was always a military installation. The farm was real, but it was also a cover. Theron's flagship shook as missiles impacted against its shields. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire. We can't get a target lock, an officer reported. They're jamming our systems. Vess pulled up a tactical display. Commander, we need to retreat now. This isn't a colony. It's a fortress. We outnumber them 12-1. Theron screamed. Not anymore, Vess said grimly. 3 more red icons disappeared from her screen. We're down to 8 ships. On New Haven, the greenhouses began to retract their transparent panels. Underneath were point defense laser arrays designed to intercept incoming fire. When the Velkari tried to launch their own missiles, the lasers cut them down before they could reach the surface. Minji glanced at her chronometer. 2 minutes had passed since the battle began. Activating secondary systems. Across the colony, the carefully tended fields began to shift. Sections of farmland retracted on massive hydraulic platforms, revealing underground facilities. These were the structures Vess had noticed on her scans, but she hadn't understood what they were. They were particle beam emplacements, weapons that could only be built on a planetary surface, powered by fusion reactors buried deep underground. Each one was capable of slicing through a warship's hull like a knife through fabric. The beams lanced upward, invisible except where they ionized the atmosphere. Another Velkari ship exploded. Then another. 6 ships remaining, Vess reported. Her voice was shaking now. Shields at 40%. We've lost all forward weapons. Theron stared at the view screen in disbelief. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be his triumph. Instead, his fleet was being destroyed by farmers. By a colony that wasn't supposed to have any defenses at all. A communication request appeared on the main display. It was from the surface. Answer it, Theron said numbly. Daehyun's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, almost apologetic. Commander Theron, this is your final warning. You have attacked Forward Operating Base New Haven, a military installation of the Earth Defense Initiative. Under galactic law, this is an act of war. Stand down immediately or we will continue to defend ourselves. Forward Operating Base? Theron repeated. You said you were a farming colony. We are a farming colony, Daehyun replied. We're also a military installation. The two are not mutually exclusive. Minji appeared beside Daehyun on the screen. Commander, your remaining ships are currently trapped in our defensive grid. Your faster-than-light drives have been disabled by our electronic warfare systems. You cannot jump away. You cannot escape. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to the conventions of war. Theron looked at Vess. Is this true? Can we jump? Vess checked her console, her face pale. No, Commander. They've locked onto our drive signatures. If we try to activate them, the feedback will destroy us. Then we fight, Theron shouted. With what? Vess gestured at her displays. We have 6 ships left. Half our weapons are offline. They have us in a kill box. If we continue fighting, we all die. Another explosion rocked the flagship. 5 ships remaining. Theron slumped in his chair. In less than 5 minutes, his entire career had been destroyed. Along with most of his fleet. How many casualties? He asked quietly. Thousands, Vess replied. And counting. On New Haven, Hyunwoo watched from a bunker viewing port as another Velkari ship broke apart in orbit. He had never seen anything like this. The colony he had lived in for 3 years. The place he had thought was just a quiet farming settlement had transformed into something terrifying. "Are we the bad guys?" he asked suddenly. Soman stood beside him. She had been preparing for casualties, expecting wounded colonists. Instead, the only injured would be Velkari prisoners. "I don't know," she admitted. "They attacked us first. We defended ourselves. But this—" She gestured at the destruction above. "This feels like something else." In the command center, Minji checked her chronometer again. 6 minutes had passed. Only 6 minutes, and the battle was essentially over. "Should we finish them?" an officer asked. Daehyun shook his head. "No, they've learned their lesson. Open a channel again." Duran's face appeared, and he looked like a broken man. "What do you want?" "Surrender your remaining ships," Daehyun said. "Your crews will be treated well. You will be allowed to contact your government. This doesn't have to end in more death." Theron looked at Vess. She nodded slowly. "We surrender," Theron said, his voice barely above a whisper. The last Velkari ship attempted to flee anyway. Its captain, refusing to accept defeat, tried to make a run for the edge of the system. Minji tracked it calmly and fired a single particle beam. The ship's engines exploded, leaving it drifting and powerless. Minji looked at her chronometer one final time and made a note in her log. "Battle duration 7 minutes 12 seconds. Enemy ships destroyed 8. Enemy ships captured 4. Human casualties 0. She leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath. Around her, the other officers were celebrating, but she felt no joy, only exhaustion. On the surface, the weapon systems began to retract. The fields slowly returned to their normal positions. The greenhouses extended their panels again. Within an hour, New Haven would look like a peaceful farming colony once more, but everyone knew the truth now. The colonists, the Velkari, and soon the entire galaxy. New Haven was not what it appeared to be, and neither was humanity. The medical center was busier than it had ever been, but not with the patients Soman had expected. Instead of treating injured colonists, she was setting broken bones and treating burns on Velkari prisoners. There were 43 of them, survivors pulled from escape pods and damaged ships. The aliens looked similar to humans in some ways. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces that could express emotion, but their skin had a bluish tint and their eyes were larger, adapted for a dimmer sun. Right now, those eyes were filled with fear and confusion. Soman moved between beds, checking vital signs and administering medicine. A young Velkari soldier, barely older than Hyunwoo, grabbed her wrist as she passed. "Why are you helping us?" he asked in broken human language. "We tried to kill you." Soman gently removed his hand and adjusted his bandages. "Because you're hurt and I'm a doctor. That's reason enough." The soldier stared at her, unable to comprehend. In Velkari culture, defeated enemies were either enslaved or executed. Mercy was seen as weakness, but this human was treating him like he mattered. Across the colony, other survivors were having similar experiences. Colonists brought them food and water. Engineers repaired their damaged equipment. Children watched them with curiosity rather than hatred. It was deeply unsettling. In the command center, Daehyun was conducting his first interrogation. Theron sat across from him, his hands bound but not uncomfortable. The Velkari commander had aged years in the past few hours. His confident swagger was gone, replaced by hollow-eyed defeat. "I need to understand," Theron said quietly. "How long has this been planned?" Daehyun poured 2 cups of coffee and slid one across the table. New Haven was established 15 years ago. From the beginning, it was designed to serve 2 purposes. On the surface, a real farming colony. Underground, a military fortress. But the people here, the families, they're real civilians. "They are," Daehyun confirmed. Most of them had no idea about the military aspects until today. They genuinely came here to farm, to build a life on the frontier. Only key personnel like myself and Minji knew the full truth. Theron took a sip of coffee. It was bitter but warm. "So you use them. You put civilians at risk to create a trap." "We gave them a choice," Daehyun replied. "Every colonist who came here was told that New Haven was in a strategic location. They knew there were risks. They chose to come anyway. Did they know they were bait?" Daehyun paused. "Not in those exact words. But they understood that living on the frontier meant accepting certain dangers." Theron laughed bitterly. "You're very good at justifying this." "I'm not trying to justify anything," Daehyun said. "I'm explaining our strategy. Earth's outer colonies are vulnerable. We don't have the resources to defend every settlement with a military fleet, so we developed a different approach. He pulled up a holographic map showing dozens of human colonies scattered across space. Many of them looked just like New Haven, small, remote, apparently defenseless. How many? Theron asked, staring at the map. 73 colonies have enhanced defensive capabilities. Some are fully militarized like New Haven. Others have smaller systems, but all of them look like easy targets. Theron felt sick. We've already attacked 4 others. I know, Daehyun said gently. And I'm sorry for your losses. But you were the aggressors. We were simply prepared. In another part of the colony, Hyunwoo was helping to salvage equipment from the captured Valkyrie ships. It was strange work, sorting through the belongings of people who had tried to kill them hours earlier. He found family photos, personal journals, lucky charms. These weren't monsters. They were just soldiers following orders. Does it bother you? A voice asked. Hyunwoo turned to see Minji standing behind him. She looked tired, her face smudged with grease and dirt. All of this, Hyunwoo said. We lied to everyone. We made the Valkyrie think we were helpless, and then we killed them. Is that really who we are? Minji sat down on a crate beside him. That's a complicated question. What would you have done differently? I don't know. Maybe we could have warned them? Told them to stay away? We did, Minji replied. Earth has been broadcasting warnings about our territorial boundaries for years. The Valkyrie ignored them. They thought we were weak because we didn't respond to their provocations. They mistook patience for cowardice. But all those people who died would have killed us without hesitation. Minji finished. Commander Theron was preparing to bombard our colony from orbit. If we hadn't defended ourselves, 3,000 humans would be dead right now, including you. Hyunwoo looked down at the photograph in his hands. It showed a Valkyrie family, 2 adults and 3 children, all smiling. Do you think they knew what their soldiers were doing out here? Probably not, Minji admitted. Most people don't want to think about war until it affects them directly. That's true for humans and aliens alike. That evening, the colony held an assembly. This time, everyone knew the truth. Daehyun stood before his people, prepared for their anger. You lied to us, someone shouted immediately. You put our children at risk. You're right, Daehyun replied. We did lie. And I understand if you're angry, but I want you to understand why. He explained Earth's strategy, how the outer colonies were vulnerable, how the military couldn't be everywhere at once, how deception and misdirection were sometimes the only weapons available to weaker powers. We needed settlements that looked real, Daehyun continued, places that would attract aggression, where we could demonstrate our capability to defend ourselves. If we had told everyone the truth, the colony wouldn't have felt authentic. Our daily routines, our communications, our entire way of life needed to be genuine. So we were actors in your play? Another colonist demanded. No, Minji interjected. You were exactly what you appeared to be. Farmers, engineers, families trying to build a life. The military infrastructure existed underneath, but it didn't change who you are. A woman in the back stood up. My daughter could have been killed. Yes, Daehyun said simply. She could have. And if I could have found a way to keep everyone safe without using deception, I would have. But this is the reality of frontier life. Danger exists whether we acknowledge it or not? Soman raised her hand. What happens now? Earth's fleet will arrive in 2 weeks, Daehyun replied. They'll take custody of the Valkyrie prisoners and captured ships. After that, we have a decision to make as a colony. Some of you may want to leave. I won't stop anyone who chooses to go. But for those who stay, we'll continue as we have been. Farming, building, living our lives. The defensive systems will remain, but hopefully we'll never need to use them again. Hopefully? Someone scoffed. The Valkyrie attacked us once, Daehyun said. They've now learned that wasn't wise. Word will spread. Other species will hear about what happened here. And maybe, just maybe, they'll think twice before attacking what looks like a defenseless human colony. The assembly continued for hours. People vented their anger, their fear, their confusion. Some felt betrayed. Others felt proud. A few were simply relieved to be alive. Late that night, Theron was allowed a communication with his government. The Valkyrie High Command listened in stony silence as he described what had happened. When he finished, there was a long pause. Are you saying they have 73 hidden fortresses? An admiral asked. That's what they claim, Theron replied. But I don't know which colonies are real and which are traps. And neither do you, another pause. This changes everything. Yes, Theron agreed. It does. The transmission ended. Theron sat alone in his cell, thinking about the war that had just become much more complicated. The Velkari Empire had assumed humanity's outer colonies were weak. Now they knew better, but the knowledge came too late and at too high a cost. 6 days after the battle, Admiral Jiwan arrived at New Haven with a full Earth battle group. She was a stern woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many conflicts. Her flagship, the Indomitable, was 3 times the size of any Velkari vessel and bristled with weapons. Daehyun met her in the command center. She looked around at the displays showing the colony's hidden systems, and her expression remained carefully neutral. "Administrator," she said formally, offering her hand. "Admiral," Daehyun replied, shaking it. "Thank you for coming." "We came as fast as we could." Jiwan gestured at the tactical displays. "Though it appears you didn't need us." "We got lucky," Daehyun said. "Luck had nothing to do with it." Jiwan pulled up the battle logs and studied them. 7 minutes. 12 enemy ships destroyed or captured. 0 human casualties. That's not luck, Administrator. That's a perfectly executed defensive operation. The Velkari underestimated us. They won't make that mistake again. Jiwan turned to face him. "But that creates new problems. Before this, the Velkari thought we were weak. Now they know we're not. That knowledge will force them to make a decision." "War or peace," Daehyun said. "Exactly." Over the next few days, the Earth forces processed the Velkari prisoners and secured the captured vessels. The prisoners were treated well, given proper quarters and regular meals. It confused them deeply. Many had expected torture or execution. Somin continued treating the wounded Velkari. One afternoon, while changing bandages on a soldier's arm, the alien spoke to her. "I don't understand your people," he said. "We attacked you. We would have killed all of you. Yet you treat us like guests." Somin finished the bandage before answering. "Would you prefer we treat you badly?" "No, but it doesn't make sense. We believe that how we treat our enemies says more about us than it does about them," Somin explained. "You were following orders. You didn't personally decide to attack us. Why should we punish you for your leader's mistakes?" The soldier thought about this for a long time. "Your species is very strange," Somin smiled. "We've been told that before." 3 months later, on the Velkari homeworld, Emperor Korthan convened his war council. The large chamber was filled with admirals, generals, and political advisors. The mood was tense. Theron stood before them, no longer a proud commander but a defeated officer brought home in disgrace. He had been interrogated, debriefed, and analyzed by intelligence officers. Now he was here to deliver his final report. "Tell us again," Korthan said, his voice dangerously quiet. "How many ships have we lost attacking these human colonies?" 63 vessels, Your Majesty," Theron replied. 8 at New Haven, similar losses at 4 other colonies. Minor losses at several others before we realized the pattern. An admiral slammed his fist on the table. 63 ships, and thousands of warriors, all because we assumed the humans were weak. "We were deceived," another officer protested. "They disguised military installations as civilian settlements. That violates the conventions of war." "Does it?" Korthan asked. He gestured to a legal advisor who stepped forward nervously. "Actually, Your Majesty, it doesn't. The humans never claimed their outer colonies were unarmed. We simply assumed they were, and we attacked first without formal declaration of war. Under galactic law, our actions were aggressive invasion. Their response was legitimate self-defense." The room fell silent. The Velkari Empire prided itself on honor and following proper protocols. But in their eagerness to expand, they had violated the very laws they claimed to uphold. "How many of their colonies have these hidden defenses?" Korthan asked Theron. "They claim 73, Your Majesty. But we have no way to verify that number. For all we know, all their outer colonies could be fortified, or it could be a bluff to make us cautious. Either way, we cannot tell which colonies are real and which are traps," the Emperor said grimly. "If we continue attacking, we'll lose more ships. If we stop, we appear weak." A young strategic advisor stood up. "Your Majesty, may I speak?" Korthan nodded. "We've been approaching this wrong," the advisor said. "We assumed humanity was primitive because their technology seemed inferior in some areas. But they've demonstrated something we didn't account for: strategic thinking. They turned their weakness into a weapon. They made us overconfident, and then they punished that overconfidence." "Your point?" an admiral growled. "My point is that we should negotiate. The humans have proven they can defend themselves. They've also proven they'll treat prisoners well. We've lost nothing by talking to them except our pride. And pride is cheaper than ships. Another long silence. Finally, Corthan spoke. Send a diplomatic envoy to Earth. Inform them that the Velkari Empire wishes to discuss terms for a ceasefire. Your Majesty, an admiral protested, that will make us look weak. We are weak, Corthan replied coldly. Or rather, we're weaker than we thought. The humans have taught us that lesson at the cost of 63 ships. I'd rather learn it now than after losing 600. The decision was made. Within days, a Velkari diplomatic ship would depart for Earth. Back on New Haven, life had slowly returned to normal. The fields were growing again. Children played in the plaza. Engineers maintained the equipment, both the farming machinery and the hidden weapons systems. Minji walked through the colony one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Hyunwoo fell into step beside her. Do you think they'll attack again? He asked. I don't know, Minji admitted. But I don't think so. Not soon, anyway. We made our point. Was it worth it? All those Velkari who died? Minji stopped walking and turned to face him. That's a question I ask myself every day. Those soldiers were following orders. They had families, dreams, lives, and they're dead because they underestimated us. She paused. But if we hadn't defended ourselves, we would be dead instead. Sometimes there are no good choices, only less terrible ones. They continued walking in silence. In the distance, they could see the memorial that had been erected near the central plaza. It listed the names of all the Velkari soldiers who had died in the battle. Daehyun had insisted on it despite some colonists' objections. We remember them, he had said. Not because we regret defending ourselves, but because we regret that defense was necessary. Hyunwoo stopped at the memorial and read some of the names. Strange alien names that meant nothing to him, representing lives he would never understand. I hope it worked, he said quietly. I hope we never have to do this again. So do I, Minji replied. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear, somewhere out there. The Velkari Empire was reconsidering its assumptions about humanity. Other species would hear the story of New Haven. Some would dismiss it. Others would take note. And on 73 colonies scattered across space, humans went about their daily lives. Farming, mining, building, living. Most of them looked peaceful and vulnerable. Some of them were, but appearances, as the Velkari had learned, could be very deceiving. Weeks later, Earth received the Velkari diplomatic envoy. Negotiations began. They were difficult, tense, and slow, but they were happening. The Velkari had come to the table not out of kindness, but out of pragmatism. They had tested humanity's defenses and found them stronger than expected. Admiral Ji-won, observing the negotiations from a distance, allowed herself a small smile. The strategy had worked. Not perfectly, many had died on both sides. But it had worked. What do you think, Admiral? Her aide asked. Will there be peace? For now, Ji-won replied. The Velkari respect strength. We've shown them we're not easy prey. That buys us time. And later we continue building. Continue preparing. Continue making sure that anyone who attacks a human colony, no matter how weak it looks, has reason to doubt their assumptions. The aide nodded. It's a good strategy. It's the only strategy we have, Ji-won corrected. We can't match the Velkari ship for ship. We can't defend every settlement with military force. So we use what we have. Creativity, deception, and the willingness to turn our apparent weaknesses into hidden strengths. On New Haven, Daehyun stood in his office, looking out at the colony. The fields were thriving. The people were healing. Life continued. He thought about all the colonists who had chosen to stay despite learning the truth. They had decided that New Haven was their home, regardless of the secrets hidden beneath its soil. They had made their peace with the deception, understanding it as a necessary part of survival on the frontier. His communicator chimed. It was Minji. I'm authorizing the expansion project, she said. 3 new fields, additional greenhouses, and a larger community center. And underneath? Daehyun asked. Underneath, we're expanding the defensive grid. New particle beam emplacements, upgraded sensors, and improved point defense systems. But on the surface, it'll just look like we're growing. Good, Daehyun said. That's how it should look. He ended the call and returned to the window. New Haven had sent a message to the galaxy. written in fire and steel. The message was simple. Humanity's outer colonies might look weak, but they were not defenseless. They were not victims waiting to be conquered. They were traps waiting to be sprung, and that message had taken only 7 minutes to deliver.